morning. Welcome. You just missed our rousing conversation about meat sweats. Welcome back to another SJU. I am Danielle Radford. I've got these lovely people here with me. I've got me and Eric Goldman.
Hello.
I've got me and Ed Greer. I've got me a Billy Business.
Morning.
And today, good morning, we're going to be talking about some Marvel Phase 4. We're going to be doing some fan questions. We've got a KOFI KINGSTON interview coming up later, and then we're going to talk a little bit about wrestling. Is it my birthday? Why do I get to talk about wrestling on the show?
Because there's no Dan Murrell or Spencer Gilbert sitting at this table. That's right.
Group.
All right, so story number one, the most anticipated of Marvel Phase 4, Dalen Mapstone. That is a great
That's a
name.
That is
name.
quite a name.
Yeah,
Mapstone?
Mapstone.
That's not a real name.
Dalen Mapstone.
Who do you work for, Dalen?
It was foretold that Dalen Mapstone would ask a
That is
question.
Look,
a
you
Harry Potter name if I've ever heard
You
one.
leave my fanfic name alone. So Dalen Mapstone asks, what is our most anticipated movie and or Disney Plus series coming up for Phase 4 and why? And why?
Okay, I'll go. Captain America and the Winter Soldier, because I love that it seems as though they're going to take on the fact that perhaps the government and perhaps a lot of people in general don't want this new Captain America and the fallout from that, as well as, you know, you got this anti-Captain America, according to some people's sensibilities, and a Russian agent rolling around together having adventures in the Scooby-Mobile. That's amazing. I want to watch that.
I know. I'm really looking forward to that too. Plus, Baron Zemo's coming back, and that's really
Yes.
exciting because
And
I
he's
love.
got the purple mask.
And he's got the purple mask, and I loved what they did with him in Civil War. It was great.
And if somebody like Taskmaster or the Russian Captain America shows up at the very end of that season, that's synergy, baby.
Synergy, baby.
The mouse has got you, baby.
Got that synergy.
These are all
Already
wrestling
doing
references
wrestling references.
that none of you will understand until later.
When a soldier, daddy.
It's all Dusty Rhodes impersonations from here on out.
Common man.
This is what happens. Guys, if we don't get to the rest of the story, they're not going to let us talk about wrestling.
Okay, sorry, Marvel, guys. Sorry, let me earn my shill check.
Don't derail the conversation, daddy.
We will get to Dusty Rhodes impersonations later.
I got to pay my mortgage, so let me get my shilling out.
Already off the rails, Radford. Good work.
I think for me, ever since Infinity, well, I always liked Doctor Strange, the first movie. I was one of the ones that actually thought, I was like, oh, that's an interesting one. And then Infinity War cemented, like, this guy is awesome. He's the only one that kind of knows what's up. He clearly, like, is tapped into this bigger world that maybe the other characters aren't. Even though I hate the title of, like, the Scooby-Doo-esque title of, like, Multiverse Mania Madness. I think Doctor Strange 2, as I will call it, I still won't, like...
Respect its Christian name.
No, I will not do it. That's like at Denny's. I refuse to order Moon over my Hammy because I won't say it out loud to a waitress. I'll point if I want it.
Are you okay with Rudy Tooty Fresh and Fruity, or is that another one?
Come on, girl. I'm not, do I look like I willfully pay for fruit at an establishment like Denny's? No. You know we're going there for. I think
You gotta sneak it in.
Yeah.
Meat sweats. Eric.
First of all, I will defend the title Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness because it's so insane, and I love that Marvel's like, we're going to call these movies these insane things. You're going to come see them. We know that. But I have to say Thor Love and Thunder, which shocks the hell out of me because coming out of Thor the Dark World, I certainly wouldn't be like, I'm psyched for the fourth one of this series. But that's the power of Taika, of Ragnarok. And yeah, like, look at that logo.
Look at that He-Man looking logo.
You gotta see a movie with that logo. So it's just coming off of Ragnarok, what Taika did, what he revitalized the character. Hemsworth clearly got way more psyched to be Thor at that point. And even bringing back Portman, which, she didn't have a lot to do in those first two movies, but now I'm very excited to see what he'll give her to do. And I am Team Darcy. Darcy better be back in this movie.
Nice.
I think she needs to say Mew Mew third time, the rule
Meow,
of three.
meow.
So, yeah.
Well, that's Valkyrie's looking for, she's a king looking for a queen.
That's right.
So we can bring in some Darcy.
There you go.
Get that.
Queen Darcy? Oh, I love it.
Yeah?
Let's do it.
You're the only one.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a bridge too far, my man.
A rainbow bridge too far?
It might be.
Oh.
This guy.
Bum chew.
We got jokes today.
We do got jokes today.
Even Heimdall can see that coming.
Oh!
Wow, 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 wow. So
Morning Zoo.
You can see Ed on Comedy Central's New Negroes.
Yeah, doing Mad Thor material.
Right.
okay.
Where my Asgardians at? All right.
I do wonder though, because whenever they introduce these like comic elements, like Civil War or something,
Yeah.
it's always like very tangentially related, or it's
Right.
like the spirit of something.
Yeah.
So I wonder like how they'll adapt the Jane Foster Thor, because it's actually very like morose and kind of sad in the
Yeah.
comics
Yeah.
when she has cancer, and every time she turns into Thor, it's like undoing her chemo. It's like that'd be a kind of a left turn to take, but I don't know how they're going to do it.
I'm going to go ahead and say that funny man Taika Waititi is probably not going to do that part of it. He's probably going to avoid the sad, stage 4 cancer thing.
I mean, I will say, I love Ragnarok. I do, if I have any criticism of that movie, it's that there was like a couple parts where I felt like he could have pulled back the humor.
Agreed.
Like when Asgard is destroyed and he has Korg make the foundation joke. It's like, cut that joke. But I wonder, I mean, if they listen to that criticism and he could just go pure comedy, which I'm fine with, or if there is a dramatic element, maybe it's like, we pull back a little bit from the humor, but of course you want the humor with Taika, so that's going to be the
I think, and just the actual humorous elements in this movie, or some of the tragedy as well, will probably be linked to the fact that this is the first Thor that we've seen that is actually traditional Thor, i.e. chained to a mortal person, doesn't really have, I mean, in the first one he didn't really have his powers, but he's still smacking the hell out of Secret Service agents. This is, I'm a regular ass person, lady person.
Right.
And then I get this immense power and the duality of that sort of power. We haven't really had that explored in a Thor movie before, so it's actually getting all the way back to its roots.
Yeah,
I like it.
Very good, very good. So how do we feel? Samuel wants to know, and this also kind of goes into Dalen's second question. So how are we feeling about the Marvel Netflix shows being confirmed as not part of the MCU?
Kind of, sorta.
Yeah.
Kind of, like they haven't, no one said it, right? But it just feels like more and more that's kind of where we're at.
That bums me out. I have to say, I really liked the idea that it was this big universe and like all of these different things can happen and you can get in more of your street level heroes and all that other stuff. Yeah, that kind of bums me out. What do y'all think?
I'm okay with it in the sense that, and I've always felt this about Marvel and DC to a certain extent, there just gets to a point, because you want to see all these heroes and you want to see them all. It just seems like there's a 5-to-1 hero to crime ratio. It's like you'd have to be. I talked about this with Victor Dandridge. You'd have to be the dumbest son of a bitch alive to pull a crime in New York, because literally there is no place you can go where there aren't 3 heroes that's separated by neighborhoods. Like it is insane. So like I'm fine if we take a couple players off the board, because that's what made, like, before, say what you want, but it's like in the X-Men movies, it was just the X-Men. That's all you had.
Yeah.
In this, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, it was like that was your guy. You had Spider-Man or you were toast. But it's like in the MCU, it's like, man, there's no crime left. Take some of the players off the board.
It reminds me of when they started doing The Wire. Dave Simon, his big thing was like, there is more crime on like Law and Order, the show, than there is in New York.
Yeah.
And so now imagine if there were also superheroes.
So I'm fine if, like, I know that the Avengers did exist in the Netflix world, but I'm okay with the reverse not being true. It's like it's fine. You had your little run. It was like a little Marvel Knights imprint is the way I see it. Like, it kind of counts, but kind of doesn't count. I'm fine with it going away.
Yeah. What do you think, Ed?
I mean, since I'm a corporate shill, and I'm gonna get in my Disney jet that's presently hovering above the roof right now. I got a rope ladder up to it. I just personally think that part of Disney right now is a real deal synergy, and I think everybody having their little. You can go off and do whatever you want. I know Chio Hadari Coker got to do whatever he wanted with Luke Cage to a certain degree, and make Luke Cage to show that he wanted to make it. And that's great, but as soon as you have that much power, they'll do something like this. They'll decanonize it, because like Timothy Zahn is a brilliant, beautiful writer. Guess what, Daddy? None of these books, they're too wild, they're too crazy. You're too good, baby. You didn't come to the meetings before you did all this brilliant stuff. So I'm sorry, but you're decanonized. That's your reward for being too original these days. And maybe that makes me an edgelord for saying that, but like if you're too original and you're outside the box, they will decanonize your ass. So that's what we're finding out.
But then how do you
Ed
explain like
Lord?
Oh, God. How do you explain something like Thor Ragnarok, which was incredibly outside the box? And it's like
still,
now they're leaning into it.
Okay, it's still corporate thinking, because if I'm a corporation and I see my Thor franchise and I see how morose it got, I'm like, I got one of the funniest and handsomest. I got the funniest handsome person ever. Like, him and Brad Pitt are dueling to me for funniest handsome person of all time. And I've put him in a bunch of morose crap for 2 straight movies. I put him in junior high school Shakespeare, the first movie.
I like that one.
And then I put him in a bunch of morose, punishing crap in the second movie, and I lit it like Zack Snyder falling down the stairs. So the next filmmaker I put on there, bright, poppy, let's use my guy's Thor powers.
Joel Schumacher did.
Yeah, and it worked.
But well.
Yeah.
Joel Schumacher through a Kirby lens.
Yeah.
That is money.
Baby.
I feel like we're never going to get an official pronouncement that it's not canon, even though it seems more and more. And already, of course, we're seeing actors being reused in the MCU, but that, people can still play different roles. But I do wonder if in like 3 or 4 years will we get a new Daredevil, and that will kind of officially be like, oh, now it can't. If there's like a different, but we don't know yet. For me, it was funny. I kind of changed my course on this. A few years ago, I was like mad at DC for the fact that none of their TV shows connect to their movies. But then I also kind of realized, man, it really is hard to keep track of all this stuff. And it would be very hard to forget. I can't forget. On top of the fact that of the corporate split between Marvel Studios and Marvel TV is the fact that just how complicated it really would be to keep all those TV shows tied together. So I'm okay with them being like, the second cousin twice removed that may or may not be connected.
They're part of the
until they
multiverse.
choose to say it's not and make a new Daredevil that cannot, coincide. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So what were some of the highlights of the Marvel Netflix series for you? What do you think?
Jessica Jones season 1, full stop.
Yeah.
It's just, it's
a good one.
perfect. It's, to me, the perfect season of television. And frankly, the villain in there, if you haven't seen it, just please watch it, because it's the best villain I think Marvel's ever done, if you don't count like Killmonger or something like that.
Right.
And if you aren't, into purple dudes who want to destroy everything, I think he's still in that, in that category, because it's the villain is supposed to make your hero scared. I am quite tired of villains showing up and they scare everybody else, but then the hero smacks them up in 2 seconds.
Right.
The hero has no fear of this person. They just have contempt for this person. That's not a villain then. That's a thug. That's a henchman. A villain goes, come into my boudoir. Let's fight. Let's go. What you gonna do? I'm way hardcore than you. And I love the fact that in this he was just in such control that she had such abject. She was horrified by her villain, and that's truly special in superhero. And I really love that series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree on Jessica Jones season 1 being a highlight. But I also will say Daredevil, I mean, even though season 2 is their weakest, I still think there's a lot of good stuff in it. But season 1 and 3, I feel like some people didn't see 3, and that's a shame, because it was really good. And having Bullseye, it's very sad we didn't get to see him put on the costume, which obviously would have been a season 4. But he's still totally Bullseye in that season, and he's pretty damn badass. I really feel that show, Daredevil's one of my favorite Marvel characters, and I feel like that show at its best, and it often was at its best, really delivered a lot of great Daredevil moments. And that one I was sad that we didn't get a season 4, even though I felt like it actually ended on a pretty good note of closure, all things considered. But that and Jessica Jones season 1 are my 2 highlights.
What about you, Billy?
Even though I didn't always love the show, I thought the casting of John Barenthal as Punisher was just inspired.
Yeah.
And I lament the fact that we'll probably never see like a Tom Holland Spider-Man interact with that version of Punisher.
Oh, yeah, that would be interesting.
Get a little bit
Just
of
the
that better in there.
dichotomy of the two, because they really are oil and water.
Yeah, that would have been interesting. So,
match, baby.
Look at that Stockade 83, baby.
okay. Sorry.
they are taking this away from us. They gave us something beautiful, and you're all ruining this for me.
Even else a cookie.
Avengers War Games, I'm into it.
So what do you guys think that Marvel Studios has learned from the Defenders and Punisher shows that it can take to Disney Plus?
I think the biggest takeaway of Defenders was that and look, I'm spitballing here, but I think that the Avengers formula of introduce 4 and then team up, that was groundbreaking, and it 100% worked, but it is not a foolproof, will always work trope.
Nice.
And I think if you start with that in mind, it just like we knew that Defenders was coming, and it was like Avengers. It's like we saw Iron Man, we're like, neat, there could be an Avengers someday,
Right.
and then we got it. It was great. But when you start Daredevil episode 1, you're like, all right, let's start this long climb to Defenders. It just doesn't work the same way. So hopefully. That's a very long way of saying I hope that these shows that they put out, they can exist within this world, but they don't always have to be a stepping stone to the big, event.
Well, and it's interesting because some of them, WandaVision might actually lead directly into
Sure.
Doctor Strange
Right.
in the Mouth of Madness or whatever. So, so that's an interesting thing right there.
It is. I just think like if you set it up that it's like, it can't be like 4 projects that all lead to another
Right.
project and then wash, rinse, repeat, because that's when we start to get tired of it. So I hope that some of these shows, like I really hope that the Winter Soldier one specifically kind of like plays within itself. It's within the same sandbox, but it's not like, all right, we are a launching point to hopefully get you to Secret Wars or whatever they do
Right.
next,
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like I'm really actually excited about the Hawkeye show too, and Kate Bishop coming in.
Yeah.
But it's like I don't need that show. Of course, the idea is Kate Bishop then can continue on to other projects, but they don't also have to have in that show like 10 plot points that are going to be set up for those future projects. Just have her as a cool character who can go into other things. And I think because whether it be Iron Man 2 or parts of Age of Ultron, I think there's often a lot of the similar criticism about movies that feel too much like. Here's a setup sequence versus just like we like these characters. And we can just have their own stories.
But we're setting up for Young Avengers.
Oh, of course.
We're setting up for Young Avengers.
Which
So.
I think people already speculated like you could put Spider-Man in this version of Young Avengers, and it would make a lot.
But they're not announcing it right off the bat, which is what I think the Defenders' problem was. It's like you always knew that you were getting kind of like a Coke Zero version of the Avengers. So you're like, oh, it's the Netflix.
That was.
I like Coke Zero.
I do too. It was just the zero sugar version.
That was a beverage diss and super dismissive. Are you Ed Greer?
I was like, oh God, what else is in the Mountain Dew family? Sierra Mist? I don't know.
Gorillas in the Sierra Mist.
So Marvel TV, they still have current series like Runaways and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which has one more year to go. And then upcoming series like Ghost Rider and Hellstrom, which are not part of the Marvel Studios or Phase 4 slate. I know it's like Hellstorm. I'm not doing
You
that.
wanted to say Hellstorm so bad.
No, I'm not doing that. Will that become more confusing for people? Is it okay if they're not all connected? I think it's fine because I think the Runaways is doing its own thing. Those don't bug me as much that they're not part of it because I don't feel like it was ever promised that it would be a part of it. So I don't know. What do you think, Ed?
Personally, I'm a big fan of the series being connected. We tried to have people like make oblique. Luke Cage is lifting a Volkswagen and helping an old lady or whatever, and they go, "Hey man, that's some pretty wild stuff that you're doing right there." Not wild compared to those aliens that blew up the whole town yesterday. It's like, oh, well, you just took the piss out of me lifting a Volkswagen. That was really impressive till your ass came along talking about aliens. You know what I mean? I had my own little thing going. You're like, so like that part kind of sucks about the way the Netflix set it up because they made themselves stepchildren because they weren't quite connected and the production value was inferior. So I believe that these Marvel, if you're going to do a TV series, you're going to spend $100 million doing 8 episodes of television. Get nuts. I want to see that. And if those things are of that production value, then I don't see any reason why they can't connect to the movies, especially in a way where you don't have to know all the lore. You don't have to watch the way the Mandalorian armor was put together to enjoy the fact that Boba Fett shows up in this scene. Yeah. I think that would be fine. And I don't think it would be confusing. That's my take.
I think that people, it's very hard, and I'm not saying this in an insulting way. It makes a lot of sense to me that it's difficult for people to understand the difference between Marvel Studios and Marvel. But I think you're going to start to see more and more people understand that these new Disney Plus shows have that Studios logo, and that means something different. That is much more intertwined. Plus the fact that they just simply star actual actors you've seen in Avengers movies.
Yeah.
I hope the Ghost Rider show and Hellstrom are just cool, weird horror shows they're going to be on Hulu, and they can have their own vibe. I think there will be some people that always be mad that like, why can't Ghost Rider come over and talk to Hawkeye? But I think that for the most
Well, they're not speaking right now. And Hawkeye knows what he did.
That's right. There's a thing we can't get into. But yeah, I think that for the most part, I think they can make it work just by having their own vibe. Like Runaways, like just have your own vibe. So you don't feel like so beholden to have to connect.
Dude, that's the thing, though, and that's why it's like I'm with you. I'm fine with Ghost Rider being because it's like if you got that scene, what would that? It'd be like so. So you're on fire.
You're on fire. You shoot arrows.
Yeah, like that's so.
So I hear you shoot arrows.
Also,
I studied archery in camp.
I do wonder. It's like if they start out like if Ghost Rider or whatever is like their own things. If they really take off and like really hit the cultural zeitgeist. Just after the fact, make them part of the world.
Sure.
Like you don't need to start shoehorning them in. Worry about it after it's a success.
Right.
Make a good show first, and then worry about where it
If
fits in.
Tigra and Hellcat become like the runaway hit, see what I did there? Then you could put it in there. You could do that. But like if they're not hits, then you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to connect things that aren't hits. I wish people would like. Why was Defenders part? Why did you get that dookie in my chocolate of Defenders / Iron Fist? I was licking my cone of Daredevils and Jessica Jones and stuff.
You're painting such a picture.
Yeah, I want to hear how you continue to.
Very unfortunate.
Good Netflix shows are ice cream, and that other stuff is not good. And I think it's weird that they would tie those things together. Some flavors don't go together. Pickles and ice cream don't go together.
I don't know if Dookie fits in.
That's not a flavor for anyone.
Yeah.
You know what?
That sounds like a lawsuit, my man.
Iron Fist is not some obscure flavor. It is off the road. I did not like that, and I felt like it denigrated a lot of Marvel mythology that could have been explored. They had to teach. The Phoenix, the last Phoenix they had, went to Iron Fist to learn to control herself through the chi. And they just ruined that. If that loser rolled up.
Well, what's tough about it too is like because it was like,
Man, you hate that dude.
Oh God!
Because they
Lots of
had
moves.
they had it in this like, well, this all counts. It's like, well, now it's like we've kind of conditioned ourselves that it's like if I saw a bad version of a Marvel character, I'll just wait till the MCU redoes it.
Yeah,
and it's like, well, now you've kind of ruined the chances of Iron Fist if this counts still. It's like, well, I guess that's what it is forever. That's Iron Fist, and he sucks.
Yeah. Too many people think Iron
Put some
Fist
shoes on,
sucks
Danny.
now.
Shoes on, Danny.
Your feet are blacker than me. Put some shoes on.
Shoes on and lotion. All right, this is Screen Junkies News on Fandom Entertainment. Make sure that you like and subscribe. We've got some great stuff on fandom.com. The comic book roots of Jane Foster's Thor, Love and Thunder story, which was written by TJ Deitch. A Fast and Furious Cram It is up. Go ahead and watch that. Family, Coronas. Lon really did a lot of good, solid work on that one, so make sure you check that out. The links are in the description. Also, Ed, so you recently had Derek Robertson from one of the creators of The Boys on your podcast.
Yeah, it was a real. We'd met him before. We saw him at Comic-Con, and he basically stepped off the red carpet talking about The Boys and came and did our podcast. And it was just like fantastic. I mean, he did it when he got back to town, but LA. But it was super great, and I love the fact that his crowning achievement is debuting right as this episode comes out. So if people want to find out more about the process of making that show, and also his nerd goat, The Flash. He likes the Barry Allen Flash. Ooh. So nerdgoatpodcast.com or nerdgoat on all the rest of the places you can. Nerdgoat Podcast on all the places you can get podcasts. Listen to Derek Robertson talk about his journey and how he got to this point. Mm-hmm. And this is the apex of his career, and he was still nice enough to be on our show. It was just, he's a really cool guy. Can't give him enough respect. Derek Robertson's great.
There you go. So smash whatever bell that you smash to subscribe to stuff. There we go. Thank you, Ryan. Destroy the bell. The bell is your enemy. Next, we got some fan questions. This is via the community tab. TTM writes, what technical achievement in a movie do you find underrated? For me, it's Steve Rogers' pre-super soldier serum in Captain America: The First Avenger. I have said this before. I know it's so corny and nobody believes me, but there is a beautiful part in Supergirl the movie, stay with me, where they call it the something ballet, and it really looks like she's flying because obviously they've got her up on wires or cables or whatever. And that was the part as a kid where I know you guys are going to hate me. Everyone's like, oh, Superman is the first time you'll believe a man can fly. No, for me, it was that part in Supergirl where she's flying and enjoying her powers and kind of like dancing in the air. And I don't know, it's really nice and no one cares or knows about it.
Well, I remember that, Danielle, and I thought it was very well done as well.
Thank you, Ed Greer. Ed Greer?
That's some good flying, baby. Okay. As far as I don't know. Come back to me. Technical achievement.
I have an answer here. It's just a general answer, but I'm a huge fan of Starship Troopers in general and all the satire and all that. But I actually love the effects in that movie. And yes, they're early digital effects. And I think sometimes people think early digital effects sucked. Well, some did and some didn't. And it's funny when people bring up like The Mummy Returns, which is that terrible CGI rock.
Yikes.
And that was like 5 years after the Starship Troopers. So some people were just doing it better than others. Starship Troopers got nominated for an Oscar, and I think you look back and yes, some of it's a little dated, the effects, but some of it I just really think it's impressive because that movie's set in like bright sunlight. And the things that they did as far as like the swarming of all the bugs and even some of the spaceship stuff, there's something about it that's really appealing. Maybe it's because the movie has this winky meta, they're selling you something. It's the whole sort of mock, like, promotion for a war that doesn't exist. So there's something about the effects in that movie too that I think are just great because they're so vibrant and also grisly because it's Paul Verhoeven and more is more for Paul Verhoeven. So yeah, I just think the effects in that movie in general, I always really kind of love to check that out.
I have a weird story about that. So my college roommate was an extra in that. Oh. And so they used, because he was really skinny at the time, because everyone's really skinny when you're 20. So they used molds of him for a lot of the severed body parts. Oh. And the way that he tells the story, he could have been lying. It was college. We were all theater nerds. So he could have been trying to get some, back then clout. Whatever version.
Some BTC.
I was disembodied in Starship Troopers. Just saying.
I mean, that holds a certain cachet with some people. So he claims that he was originally, I have to be very delicate about how I tell the story, that he was originally in the shower scene, and the shower scene was going to be full frontal, and he was cut because... He was cut because certain things maybe didn't measure up. And then once they decided that it wasn't going to be full frontal for everyone, they just didn't put him back in. I guess that isn't a brag.
Yeah, why not? I tell you, it's like, my wiener was too small to be in Starship Troopers. Just saying.
By the way, friends of mine from college are also in Starship Troopers. One of them you can see prominently in the scene where they get into the big fight set to Mazzy Starr, which I love.
Oh, I love that
He's
scene.
like one of the soldiers in the background. You can see him like talking to his buddy. But yeah, they got to gear up for much
Can't
of
you
the
just
movie.
CGI my wiener?
I was trying to be very delicate. Oh, they're taking everything away from me now. I've ruined everything.
Bye.
I'm more inclined to believe it if it's like self-deprecating in a way. Like, yeah, it just wasn't big enough to put on screen. Like, why would you say
I
that?
shouldn't have told this story.
I mean, it's a devastating self-own.
Yeah.
Sorry, Joe.
I actually think that guy's pretty awesome for just owning it. Like, wow, way to just do you, man.
Oh, I think I actually thought of one. So you could be the headliner, Billy, because I know yours are going to be really good. But, I think as much as Blade has been in the recent zeitgeist from the Mahershala Ali announcement, which he did like a kid picking a college. You know,
That's
like,
right.
yeah, I'm going to Duke, baby.
Gonna be Blade.
Yeah, that was just really cool. I really like that.
Yeah.
And but like Blade, the first Blade, obviously everybody knows that it brought a lot of superhero stuff to the zeitgeist. Even arguably that and the X-Men were the one that kind of exploded this thing for the modern era. Okay, but Blade 2 also has an achievement in it, which to my eyes, and if you go back, there's some horrible CGI in there because it was quite early, but it is probably the very first time that I believe that two superhuman people were fighting in a movie ever. It's probably the very first time because Nomak seems to be about 200 pounds, Blade seems to be about 200 pounds, and they could both lift about 10 tons. And boy, it seems that way. If I punched a 200-pound thing and I could lift 10 tons, it would fly. And they fly away from each other. They slam into walls and bust out the stuff. Nomak did a people's elbow on that fool from like a football field away. He ran up the wall and people's elbowed him. And I was like, this is the best thing I've ever seen. And people just forget it. People think that the Russo brothers invented the modern sort of superhero action, and they did not.
That's true.
But conglomeration of people did. And the people who worked on that second Blade movie, there was a lot of great stunts and great fights in there that I think have been lost to the annals of time as far as rated technical achievement.
Guillermo.
Yep.
I would say if the question is underrated, I think, look, the goal, I think anyone that would do special effects would tell you is like, you would never know you're watching a special effect. So this was going around a while back. You could find it on YouTube, I'm sure now. There was like a VFX reel from, of all movies, The Wolf of Wall Street. and it was just absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah.
That like
invisible effects.
You would never think twice.
The
that
Margot Robbie thing
it's insane. Like you think that they're in this park in London, but really they're like on a bench, and it's like there's like a big Chicago building or something behind them.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think to me, like we've seen so many CGI monsters, some to better degrees the other, that the fact that like I was like, oh, Wolf of Wall Street has like special effects in it, and then you're like, it is so unbelievably seamless. It's like, why is it? Is it just because like, I don't know, you would think it's like something, it would be harder because we know exactly what those things look like. But the fact that they're able to like incredibly convincingly fool you to the point where you're just like, oh yeah, that movie couldn't have cost that much because, you know, they don't have to do a big superhero budget. It's like, no, there's actually like a ton of like locations that are not real in that movie. Find that VFX reel, because it's like the best example I've ever seen of like just spot on use of CG.
The hidden nature.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because so there's that scene in, I think it's the Playroom or whatever. It's been a while since I've seen that movie with Margot Robbie, and they actually extended her leg out, which is a huge thing that you would never notice. So yeah, that is a great pull, Billy. Lucas W would like to know, what's a seemingly obscure movie or TV trope that you secretly love?
Now, I think he did list in his full question, he listed an example of like when a TV show changes their opening credits, and I think Game of Thrones is probably the most famous example, like, oh, a new location.
Yeah.
So I also want to say The 100, which is a show I love anyway. They do a cool thing with a map that they've added things to this sort of digital readout of locations. But another one I really love that's kind of cheesy, but I just find it adorable, mostly in TV, a little bit of movies, is the fact that in TV shows, people always go to each other's house to have a 30-second conversation. And I understand why they do it, because dramatically it's just not as interesting to have two people on the phone, plus you have to shoot the scene in two different locations probably. So we'll just have the guy walk up to the door. But think about how many times you watch a TV show and someone walks to a door to just say one thing and leave. And then I'm like, that dude got in his car, he drove over there, walked up to say something.
You know, or depending on the show, he left his architecture job and then took the train and then...
Right. I'm like, that is so much work. Sometimes to say something like I'm angry, but sometimes just to say like, hey man, I just wanted to say I support you, or hey man, you know, wow, these people, like they just really, it's really important to have that face-to-face contact, and that is a TV trope. Having watched a lot of TV now professionally, I'm always like, you just did that with the knock and leave.
I really like when anthropomorphic animals still do animal stuff. So I I'm not a huge Family Guy fan, but I like when Brian gets excited and his tail wags. Like those are things that I really, it's so dumb, but I was like, look, he's like a dog.
Yeah,
I'm a child.
I liked Fantastic Mr. Fox for that reason. Like they're just like, yes, we will do this business murder. Oh, our food came. Yeah, so it's like they can't eat like people because that doesn't make any sense. Nor does them making a business meeting, but.
He has strong feelings.
Like and subscribe. Sorry, it's Pavlovian at this point.
As far as I'd say I want to do mine because it's dumb. If you've ever watched old TV shows where there's any sort of transformation, I used to love, like me and my mom used to watch The Hulk.
Yeah.
And the Hulk TV show with Bill Bixby and et al. And he's running from this reporter who wants to expose him as the Hulk. He's running from the different people, and he just gets these weird jobs. And the thing was, he always got into trouble. They always beat his ass. And then they threw him behind something so he could transform.
Right.
And my mom used to be like, hey, what they gonna throw him behind this week? Like my mom noticed that they would throw him behind stuff so he could transform. And I remember one episode that it was like an ironing machine. And they like ironed his arm for some reason, and he was like, "My arm has been ironed. This is horrible." And then they're like, "Well, take this." And they threw him behind the ironing machine, which weighed like 5,000 pounds, so it moved when he got up as the Hulk. And I just love that stuff. They like show the Hulk is big, show he's strong, hurt him, throw him behind something. All that Wolfman stuff. I love it when I see it. I love when something drops out of frame, it pops back up as something else. I love it.
Get the green contacts and Bixby for the transformation. You're making me think how funny it is to think about that TV show and the fact that Dr. David Banner, yes, he was David on the TV show, don't forget, why he got beat up so much. Like, at a certain point, it's you, man. Like, if you go to this many towns and meet this many people who want to beat you up on, like, a weekly basis, like, there's something about you.
Dude, he must have been saying some edgelord stuff in between scenes.
That's right.
It's like, release the Snyder Cut. All right, dude, we got you.
Billy.
I'm trying to think because every trope I'm thinking of, I'm like, no, that annoys the piss out of me. Like I was thinking, like on your thing, on to piggyback if yours, like it drives me bonkers anytime there's a show or movie in LA and they just pull their car right up to the front, and I'm like, where's the 20-minute circling around,
Hoping a spot's gonna open.
Yeah. This isn't really a trope, so I'm gonna cheat, but I'm gonna say one of my favorite shows of all time is The Wonder Years, and it was one of it piggybacked off of Christmas Story in terms of the trope of like the narration of what was going on. But again, on YouTube, after you look at the Wolf of Wall Street visual effects, someone cut together that Kevin Arnold is the most socially awkward person ever because they will ask him a question, pull the narration out, and he just sits there blankly for about 45 seconds like, hey, Paul, how's it going? Like, Kevin, did you do your homework?
I was going to do my homework, but then the 60s happened right behind me.
It's just like, it's like, what is wrong with Kevin Arnold is my favorite TV show ever. He's the most socially inept person ever. So I will say that it does not answer the question at all, but I gave you another thing to YouTube.
No, that is quite fantastic. All right, you guys. So this is via Fandom. At Comic-Con, Eric spoke to WWE champion Kofi
Oh,
Kingston.
you got to do it correctly.
WWE champion Kofi Kingston. For those of you who don't follow wrestling, do. But it's been a huge year for Kofi. You guys, wrestling's fake. You don't have to leave that in the comments. We totally know it's fake. It's predetermined, but the athletics are not fake. You cannot fake those moves. That's pretty amazing. The exciting thing about this situation is Kofi got his shot and ultimately became champion because of the fans, because fans rallied around him, and because he's been around for like 11 years, and people love him, and so we were really excited about that. We've got quite a few wrestling fans here, obviously, so don't go nowhere after the interview because we're going to come back and we're going to talk about wrestlers in movies, who stood out more than others. Obviously, we're going to talk about your The Rocks. But for right now, we are... why do I talk like this? But for now, please enjoy Eric's interview with Kofi Kingston, and we will see you in a bit.
Hey guys, Eric here. I am with the WWE champion. I'm not going to say it with the flair you
and
guys
why not?
do. I'm sorry.
And why not?
I just feel like I won't deliver.
Sir, you got to have enthusiasm. You know what I'm saying? I was on Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins' toy show the other day too, and the same thing. Everyone wants to breeze by it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I waited 11 years to have this championship, guys. We got to embrace this.
We do.
Enthusiasm. Your WWE World Heavyweight Champion!
Kofi Kingston!
Yeah, we're not going to be able to say that forever, so while we can, we got to, to the heavens, bro.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I'll get to Comic-Con in a minute, but yeah, you're mentioning the belt, the 11 years.
Yeah.
How freaking trippy and amazing has this year been? Because I was at the Rumble, right?
Yeah.
And, it's a fun event, but it was like right before everything really started to shift for you.
I hope I don't get too emotional like talking about it, but just... stars aligning. I believe that everything happens for a reason. So for me to come to WWE, if I were to have won the WWE Championship earlier in my career, this wouldn't have meant nearly as much. The 11-year journey. Gosh, the president of Ghana, where I was born, declared this year as the year of return, where he invited all members of the Ghanaian diaspora to come back to Ghana and get reacclimated with the motherland. Out of all the years that he could have chosen, he chose this year. It happens to be the year that I win the WWE Championship. Out of all the opponents that I could have had, it happened to be Daniel Bryan, who was in the very same position that I was in just 2 years earlier, where the fans were demanding that he be on WrestleMania. You know what I'm saying? So stars just aligning. Even and my grandmother was over there, my mom's mom, who I hadn't seen probably in 27, 28 years when she came to the United States. I got to see her, and she ended up passing away like 2 weeks after I saw her. You know what I'm saying? So like, and then on top of that, like we were gonna shoot so we did like a documentary on the whole journey, and we were gonna go in August. We ended up moving it up to July, to June, and if we hadn't moved it up, like I would have just missed seeing my grandmother. So like so many things, like it's been so serendipitous in so many ways. Like I get goosebumps thinking about it.
You mentioned Daniel Bryan. It's such a rare thing when you have something that just this organically, this, sort of fan driven. So when you were in the middle of it, even before Mania, was it just sort of like, whoa, just feeling that wave, feeling like, no one planned it. It wasn't like a calculated thing. Just be like, wow, they are really behind me right now.
It was insane in Houston, Actually, even before Houston, with the Elimination Chamber, with the Gauntlet match, it triggered something in me, and I'm like, nah, like this is the moment that I've been waiting for. Like, what are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? Like, almost offended that you would even ask me that, for me to get to this point and be so close, and you're telling me to walk away? Like, yeah, it's a story, but it's not, because it's a legitimate, 11-year journey. Like, I've never had the chance to wrestle for the WWE Championship, So, then the fans started to feel that too, and I could just feel the crowd, come alive, and they're like, yeah, wait a minute, this isn't like a storyline. Like, he actually had to wait over a decade for this moment. We want this for him. And then everybody just was just infused with this energy, and we all together started just marching towards WrestleMania. And
New Day has such a great entrance, and you guys have a really good theme, but I have to say, selfishly, I kind of love the old SOS theme, and I wonder, might he come out once to it and during that?
You know what the funny thing is a lot of people say that, and I always say, hey, if you want it, number one, you can go on the Spotify or iTunes and download it and listen to it at your will, or go on the WWE Network and watch all the throwback matches, but I can't go backwards. We actually had, for WrestleMania, we were in the process of getting an original song just for that night. And it was so close. Wale was going to be on it. Mega Ran, was on the beats, and it would have had a little bit of SOS in there. Sure. But at the end of the day, Vince didn't want to do that, so we didn't. But one of these days we'll release that song and then let everybody know what we had planned. It was just going to be so ornate and amazing. Not that it wasn't, but it was going to be something special.
So we're here at Comic-Con. You guys always have a super fun panel with Mattel. What was it like coming back here this year? Obviously, you're coming back in here as the champ. Yeah. How did the panel go? And what was it like again? It's a really fun vibe. Obviously, you guys got great crowds wherever you go, but I feel like the Comic-Con vibe has to be sort of a unique thing onto itself.
Absolutely. It never gets old. I've been to a few different Comic-Cons now, and even still, after getting figures for so long, you'd think that the novelty would wear off, but like we were talking about it earlier, I'm legit on the edge of my seat, just kind of bouncing up and down, and it's like, oh my God, oh look at the Lucha House Party's getting their own figures, it's all detailed. Oh, look, my WrestleMania figures on there. They have this Master of the Universe and WWE collaboration going on, which that just blows my mind, right?
That is
it's insane.
So insane. I wanted to ask you about that. Yeah. Masters of the Universe, WWE mashup figures, and the New Day has Manny faces, the character Manny faces with the triple face, and it's all three.
What are we doing? What is this life? It's just so amazing. I never imagined, how could I have ever thought that as a kid watching Masters of the Universe and wanting these action figures. I remember specifically I had the Castle Grayskull. Yeah. Something happened to where it broke in half. I lost half of it for a couple years and went back, found the other half. So I only had the front half. So I have all these memories of He-Man and Skeletor and all these characters, and never in a million years did I ever imagine that one day I would have an action figure associated with Masters of the Universe. What? It's crazy.
Yeah, lastly, I wanted to ask you a couple of New Day questions because they, your buddies, they just won the tag belt.
Sure
so
did.
How cool is that now to have these 3 belts?
Got all the gold, baby. Yes. And people are like, wow, well, that's silver. That's not gold. Get your eyes checked. It's white gold. It's white gold. You don't know? You don't know what it is. It's white gold. When we say we have all the gold, we know what we're talking about. Trust us. Don't argue with us on Twitter. Yeah.
New Day, to me, what's so impressive about New Day is you guys are really funny, but you definitely haven't been pigeonholed as they're a comedy group. It's sometimes in wrestling you're like, oh, that's what they do, but it's you guys can be really funny, but it's never in doubt that it's a credible threat, dangerous group. Was it kind of cool for you guys to figure out how to make that energy work? And obviously you were heels initially, and kind of figuring out where that would all go.
Well, initially we were baby faces.
That's
we
true.
We wanted to be good guys, but nobody was having it. Really, no, we don't like you. You're telling us to be better, but you suck. You know what I'm saying? All we ever did was come out and tell people to be the best versions of themselves. And in this jaded world that we live in, that means that we suck. What? So then we start doing these hypocritical things, and we say that preach the power of positivity, and then do these dastardly things. We talk about about save the tables, and we go break the tables, and all of a sudden people are like, yeah, you guys rock. That's what our society is, very, very jaded and strange. But we actually went back, we did like this watch along we have on our WWE network where we go back and watch one of our matches. So we watched the tag team match that we had actually at Extreme Rules versus Cesaro and Kid. And it was so interesting to watch like our mannerism, the whole journey of like finding ourselves. It's been very real, you know. I try to. We had recently moved into our new house about a year ago, and we had a party across the street, and I'm trying to, you know, explain to people what it is that I do, and like, yeah, I'm with a group called the New Day, and we come out, we throw pancakes out. We had a cereal called Booty-O's. We like ice cream. We wear these unicorn horns, bright colors. You know, I skip clap sometimes. I'll twerk. You don't understand. None of it makes sense, you know. So if you haven't been on the journey, like it just doesn't make sense for me to describe it to you. You have to go back and literally watch it, you know, or you would have had to have experienced it like on the come up. But what people know now is that the New Day comes out, and like you said, we go out, we have a lot of fun, we make sure everybody's having fun. But when the bell rings, we make sure that we're legitimate.
Well, you just made me think about how I can't wait to see the next evolution of the food products, because you guys do an amazing job with that.
Yeah, we like breakfast.
You like breakfast. You're big on breakfast.
And these things just happen, you know, and we just go with what the people are with, even with the whole pancakes deal. Like we had the lumberjack match, I think it was against Kevin Owens and Sam Zayn. And it was me and Big E in the match, and Woods was a lumberjack with everybody else, but he was on our team, so he was a little bit elevated. He was the chief lumberjack, so he came out wearing the flannel, you know, and the hat, you know what I'm saying? And what do lumberjacks eat? They eat pancakes, and that was it. Everyone's chanting, "We want pancakes." The next day, we came out and asked Vince, like, "Hey, do you mind if we go out with these pancakes?" He says, "Do you wanna?" "Yeah." "Okay, go ahead." And then all of a sudden, here we are throwing pancakes out to the crowd. So again, another thing that just doesn't make sense. But if we didn't have that lumberjack match, I don't know. Maybe we'd be doing waffles. Who knows?
And now it makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, WWE Champion Kofi Kingston. Thanks for joining us here today.
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for having me on.
No problem. Thanks.
And we're back. I'm very glad you missed that conversation, but I'm glad you didn't miss the one with Kofi.
And also, I was thinking that the 2 earthquakes were happening.
Yeah, this building is going through some changes. Changes. So Kofi will be appearing in an upcoming Netflix movie produced by WWE alongside fellow wrestler and actor, and also, I think, winner of MTV's The Challenge, The Miz. Many wrestlers have appeared in movies throughout the years. Obviously, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has become huge. So what are some of your favorite movies featuring pro wrestlers? I'm going to go ahead and say the Marine series is hot garbage and awful, and I love them all so much, and I watch each and every one of them whenever they come out. And Becky Lynch was in the last one, and she was actually really, really good.
Yeah, you tried for like a half an hour to convince me to you
And I
don't
will
need to
try
see
for
Marine
longer.
1 through 5. Just go watch Marine 6. I'm like, I'm not doing that.
We're just going to start setting up mics in the office.
Right?
As we talk about, of course, Dwayne Johnson, it's hard not to think of all his movies, so I'm going to say Fast 5 because that's a stellar film. But also, I really respect the fact that Jesse Ventura, as far as I know, someone's going to correct me and say, oh no, there was a Jesse Ventura movie, but for the most part, he seemed to know, like, he's not going to be the star of a movie, but he could pop up in these Schwarzenegger movies, so it's like Predator, perfect, Ain't Got Time to Bleed, that's stellar. And then I also have to say, underrated movie in general, but MacGruber, the wrestling, the sequence with the WWE guys in MacGruber, Jericho especially, he kind of gets the spotlight. But a stellar sequence of a very, very funny movie. Check it out.
Check it out.
Jesse Ventura was in Master of Disguise.
Ooh, Jesse
Master of
Ventura is
Disguise.
in Master of Disguise. Thank you very much,
He's
Ryan.
also in Batman and Robin amongst the Schwarzenegger movies.
I think, well, at least for now, I think the Rock is the most popular, but I think the better actor is Dave Bautista. Like, there's
He's
a guy.
getting there.
He's great.
I never would have thought in his like championship run in like 05, 06 that he would turn out to be like a Hollywood A-list.
Oh no, who could have ever called
No,
that?
no.
That's one that came out of nowhere.
Nowhere, and
Yeah.
it totally works. But you know what's also strange? He still does some like direct to Redbox movies,
Yeah.
and then he'll turn around and come out with like an amazing like Blade Runner 2049. I'm like, pick a lane, my dude. Where's your career trajectory going? But Actually, you know what? Have you seen that? Sorry to digress, but on that, have you seen Nicolas Cage? Someone like very like condescendingly asked him like, "Why do you do so many red box movies now?" He's like, "Because like 20 years ago, these would have been like Leaving Las Vegas would have been a red box movie." He's like, "I just do the movies I want to do." So
Yep.
maybe Batista's got it all figured out.
Yeah,
he
maybe
just
he's
does
got
what
it
he
all
wants to
figured
do.
Yeah, and also I'm hella broke. I wasted all my money. I mean, that's the
Don't invest in Superman futures.
That's the reality. But the 25% artistic side of Nicolas Cage
Right.
was like, oh yeah, I just want to do the movies I want to do.
Hey,
Where's
anybody
National
named
Treasure
after Luke
3?
Cage is a cool guy to me. I saw Jesse Ventura in a movie called Abraxas. Look it up. It's
Abraxas.
worth it. It's called Abraxas. He plays interstellar bounty hunter type hero, like superhero. It sucks.
Spell it?
It's
Is it-
ABRAXIS something S. Abraxas. It's really it's so bad it's good, and it was also on a Mystery Science Theater, so you can watch it with.
He loves playing a
commentary.
bounty hunter.
Nice.
Yeah,
He's really
yeah.
into playing somebody that's just killed to murk people.
I think people forget how many people have passed through wrestling, so I just got to give shouts to a guy I've actually met that was a wrestler, a bodyguard, a bodybuilder, a movie star, and that's Mr. T. People forget his time of wrestling, but him and Hulk Hogan back in the days were a little team, and they were very. That was an era when that's my little baby kid era, and I was like, wow. This is great, and I would hear people ask him stupid questions like, "What's up with your mohawk, man? That's weird." It's like, "Well, actually, this is an African tribe," and then they'd be like, "Oh God, I don't want to hear about this." So Mr. P using his like,
Mr. P? But Master P was in WCW.
He was.
Lest we forget.
Along with former WCW champion David Arquette. David Arquette.
And the Insane Clown
Yeah.
Posse.
For those of you who don't know, David Arquette is a former WCW
is.
world
Champion.
champion.
Yep.
wow.
And now he is currently on the deathmatch circuit,
Yeah.
taking some real nasty
Yeah,
like.
Oh yeah, he did that match
that-
where he
that-
got like hit by all the lights. And
Yeah.
stuff.
That's hard to watch. Don't look
I don't
that
like
one
those
up.
things.
Yeah,
Those things
don't
are
look
not
that up.
pleasant. And also for everyone who knows now we can get to it. The impersonations everyone was doing earlier were of Dusty Rhodes, known as
Yes.
The American
Dream, son of a
Yeah.
plumber. He was brilliant, and he passed away, and everyone loves him, and he has a very distinct speaking style. So, what are your least favorite movies that star wrestlers?
There's a lot of Hulk Hogan you can bring up because
No Holds Barred is the worst movie to feature a wrestler. Full stop to me.
Is it worse than Ready to Rumble, which is the David Arquette movie? Ready to Rumble. Of course you like Ready to
I don't
Rumble.
like Ready to Rumble is a bad movie, but
Flip over this
it is an
table.
amusing movie to me just
Yeah.
because it's so ridiculous and just the fact that it's a very specific era of WCW, and they don't try to explain anything. So when Sting shows up in the movie, it's like you better know who the hell this guy is,
Yep.
looking like the Crow.
Yeah.
because we're gonna
Yeah.
act like he's really important, but we're not gonna give you any context for it.
Yeah, but all that stuff in No Holds Barred, where he's just like, they try to make it like wrestling is like real fighting that happens in refineries and old factories, and Batman's on a church tower watching these guys wrestle in the street, and it's real, and all the blows are real, and it's like, this is horrible. Like this violates the kayfabe. It violates so many things about wrestling. Wrestling is a constrained environment and in the arena. And outside the arena.
Kayfabe is the story of what wrestling is. So when people say wrestling is fake, that's the story of it is kayfabe. And keeping kayfabe used to mean, back before everyone knew that wrestling was fake, that there were certain things wrestlers were not allowed to do. They couldn't travel with their buds if they were fighting against each other and things like that.
I wish
am
we had
an
a graphic.
encyclopedia of
I wish-
weird
no.
wrestling knowledge.
I wish we had a graphic that
Right?
came up that was like wrestling explanation. You know?
I'll say it's certainly
Dan-splaining.
Dance-plaining. Fantastic.
It's not. Yeah. Why is that not? Oh, that podcast. Weird. Yep. Anyways. I don't think it's the worst movie, but I'll say definitely the most disappointing movie, and it had two wrestlers in it, was Get Smart. It had Great Khali and The Rock,
yeah.
and I thought that summer, that was a like stacked summer, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, it's going to be a great comedy, and The Rock's in it, and it
Yeah,
was
and
just
Steve
like
Carell was so huge at the time.
Yeah.
and it just sucked. It was terrible.
I think that was part of what contributed to like him, because he at that point he was getting to like Will Ferrell, like I am the most famous comedian in the world.
Well, he did Evan
And he just had a
Almighty
bunch
and
of-
then Get Smart, and he's like, I need to reevaluate what I'm doing here.
which is good. Take it back to the back.
I just want to swing back for a second to the good wrestling movies, just because I'm glad you mentioned Batista. Because if you haven't seen from last year, Hotel Artemis, I don't think it's like a great movie, but I think it's a really cool movie, and there's so many great actors in it. And Batista plays the right-hand man to Jodie Foster, which is a sentence I never thought I could say.
Nice.
We live in a gilded age.
It's a cool duo. Jodie Foster and Dave Batista. I want to see them do more movies together.
All right, last question, and we'll wrap it up. Is there a wrestler that you want to see in a movie who has not been in one yet? I think, and I mean, she has technically, but I think Becky should do more movies. Becky did a great job. She's great on the mic. She's great at talking. I feel like I want to see Seth Rollins do a movie, but I feel like I would regret it immediately.
Yeah, that would be bad. I think Kevin Owens could pull off a good movie.
I like that.
I definitely think he's the most natural when it comes to like speaking on the microphone, so I could see him making the transition pretty easily.
Well, and John Moxley is definitely going to be in movies. John Moxley is the name of, he was formerly known as Dean Ambrose, and now he's going by John Moxley, which was his indie name.
I really like the Kevin Owens one because he's really funny, and he's like naturally funny.
Yeah.
Like, you know, he's disarmingly funny, I think, especially when he was like super heel, but you'd be like, oh, that's a really good joke he threw in there. And I actually would be curious to see Alexa Bliss, so I also think has made a lot work with her sort of heel persona over the years.
Absolutely. She's also great on the mic.
Yep.
Yeah, you know who I'd like to see in a movie, honestly? I'd like to see Jordine Grace in a movie.
Yeah.
I think that would be so cool because like when she's not in a wrestling get-up and stuff, you know, she could just be any lady sitting at Starbucks or whatever, and somebody comes
with some huge guns. Jordan,
like, you know.
Jordan Grace is she's on Impact, and she is also an indie wrestler, and she's amazing.
But there's her in a big sweater and big sweatpants, just sort of sitting by her computer, sheepishly drinking some coffee, and somebody comes and starts some stuff, and then she power bombs them like that. Oh, fantastic!
Like
I'd love that.
A remake of The Net, but with her.
Yeah,
She can fight them all.
You never need to remake the net ever. There's only one net. Let's leave
Don't
it
touch
at that.
perfection.
The guys who, but again, this is, I say this all the time, but bad stuff comes from the exact same place as good stuff.
Yep.
Those writers wrote The Game, which is an underrated David Fincher movie, and it's the same story over again, but with a rich guy instead of a lady. It's the same beats. Your life fell apart. The computers don't say that you're right. Blah 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 blah. You're
Shadow
crazy.
Organization.
Yeah.
Shadow Organization.
Yeah.
But it's so infinitely better. So you know, good stuff comes from the same place as bad stuff. So.
That's where we'll end it today. Good stuff comes from the same place as bad stuff. Thank you so much, Ed Greer. My life is proof of that. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. It does good stuff, bad stuff, things, words. Comment low, bound.
Nailed it.
Bye, good.